What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 34. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in last week. Hope you guys have had a great weekend, got some gaming in, maybe got outside, touched some grass, just living life. And I feel like this week has kind of been just crazy. I mean, of course, personal stuff's going on and work's crazy and that keeps me busy. But in the gaming world, dude, there's a kind of a lot going on. A little bit of drama, of course, in the console war space. There's some interesting rumors going around, and I feel like we got a lot to talk about this week. So sit back and enjoy, because there's quite a few things I want to cover and touch on. And I also want to thank again Xbox Tavern. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode where I sat down with them and we talked, Xbox, we talked a little bit of PlayStation, and it was a really good and fun conversation. So I hope to do more of that. They said they would invite me on their show, so that would be fun to do. And I'm excited. I want to get more of that because I really enjoy getting people on the show and just having a conversation with folks. So like I said, I got another one in mind that I need to reach out to, but quite frankly, if you guys know of anyone that would make for an interesting conversation on video games, hit me up, hit them up, let us know, and let's try to get it going, because it's really fun. When you're passionate about video games, you want to sit down and talk to someone else who's equally passionate and not out there just for clout. That's fun. That's good stuff, and that makes for awesome content. So really do appreciate that and hope you guys enjoyed that. Also, I want to say just a big thank you to you guys again. The support lately has been awesome. This last week on podcast downloads kind of blew up for me, and it's awesome to see. So I know we've got some new listeners out there, so thank you guys. Welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you guys here. And actually, one new listener wrote in via Twitter, and I don't remember the name from my YouTube days, but I'm pretty sure this is one of my old YouTube subscribers. He goes by the handle of Underdog35. So he wrote in and said, "Just stumbled on your new podcast, so I'm starting with number 1 and we'll work to get caught up. I'm glad you're back. I always liked your content and is always down to earth and real. Anyhow, glad to see you back. Great job." So Underdog, or Killer's Toxin, as you have on there, thank you so much for that heartfelt comment. I really do appreciate it. It is fun to be back. It's fun to just be back doing some form of content, talking about video games. I wanted to come back in this form because I felt like it was much more manageable with my work-life balance and all of that. So hope you guys enjoy it. Maybe we can dabble into some other things. Like I've said before, I've been dabbling in YouTube Shorts with podcast clips and a couple other things. Though I've slacked this last week. I've kind of been on the slacking side, but don't worry, it'll come. So it's been great. So I'm happy to hear that you enjoy it, and I really do appreciate your love, kindness, and support. So thank you for that. Now, for those of you who are new, and I know some of you are, remember, the best way you can support the show is to leave us a comment, drop a rating on your favorite podcast platform. Helps us to get into the algorithms, and I love to interact with you guys, so really do appreciate that. I'd love to see you over on Locals, which is kind of the Patreon alternative platform. It's a really cool platform. It's like a free speech platform that I want to support. So, and I want to try to cultivate a community over there. So check it out, thegamesitechronicles.locals.com. I also post the podcast over there, so you can listen to it there if you'd like. And then I'm toying with the idea of maybe making it early over there. So more to come on that. You can follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And remember, you can catch new episodes of the show each and every week, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's show, I want to discuss primarily the Horizon remake and multiplayer rumors that have kind of been circling around all over the internet. But there's also a few other items I wanted to touch on as well, because, like I said, it's been a crazy news week. So Xbox made an update to their website about the Activision Blizzard acquisition. I want to touch on that. CD Projekt Red released a roadmap of all of their upcoming projects, which is pretty big. EA and Koei Tecmo's upcoming game Wild Hearts got a new trailer. I thought it was pretty interesting, so we'll touch on that. And then, of course, there was a Nintendo Direct, albeit very short, to show off the new Super Mario Brothers movie. So we got to talk about that because I love me some Mario. Now, before we get into that, though, let's talk about the games that we're playing. And remember to write in and let me know what games you've been playing, just like our friend Xerxes Montez did, who said, "Yo, man, good to hear from you this week. I've been playing Octopath Traveler for the first time on PC, so it's very hype. I'm grinding levels to blast through all of the 4 chapters as fast as possible because I play the game for the story." And then he goes on to say he's watching Netflix's Sandman, which is awesome. I've heard that's a great series. So, Xerxes, thanks for writing in. Happy to hear that you're playing Octopath Traveler. That's a game I after playing Live Alive, I think is how it's pronounced, or Live I'll Live. However you say that game that I've talked about on the show, Live Alive. I really feel like I would like Octopath Traveler because it seems like it's in a similar vein. And I love the arts. I love the 2D HD art style that Square Enix has got going on. And it's on the backlog, man. You know what? I would really, since Octopath Traveler 2 is coming to, I think, all platforms next year, I would really love it if they brought Octopath Traveler to PlayStation. Though I think the Switch is a nice place to play it as well. Though it's kind of, I think the copies of Octopath Traveler are kind of hard to come by, like at their full price at least, if you can find them online. So either way, glad to hear you're enjoying that game, though. That sounds pretty cool, though. You're playing it on PC. This is a console gaming podcast, my friend. So I'll let it slide, but just remember that. Now, for me, I have been playing, obviously, Nobody Saves the World. I finished this game, finally. It took me just under 23 hours, and overall, this game is awesome. It's genuinely great. I know I've gushed about it the last few weeks, but it's just a really fun time. It's a great dungeon crawler game, and I think one of the things that makes this game so great is the ability to kind of create a variety of different builds with your characters. So as I mentioned, the kind of shtick of the game is you can transform into a variety of different characters, and then eventually you can use all those characters' abilities and swap them out between your different characters. So you get to a point to where you can choose your form and have your main attack, and then tack on a bunch, 3 other attacks from other forms with different abilities, as well as some attributes. So you can really kind of play with different builds to tackle the various dungeons, because some of the dungeons have different modifiers as well. So like there's one dungeon that for a while was kind of kicking my ass because all damage is like times 99999. So basically everything's one hit kill in this dungeon. And so I eventually looked up like what a good build for that one was, just because I was so stumped on it. And you end up using this ability to where like if you get hit, it only knocks like a fifth of your health down. So that way you can not worry about one hit dying. And then the other part of it was to summon a bunch of like familiars is what they're called. So basically, allies. So like the magician character in the game, you can pull out a bunch of rabbits or tigers as he calls familiars. And then there's actually 2 other characters that can summon zombies, or raise the dead. Ooh, dog in the background. But I basically had both of those abilities and just summoned a bunch of people who pretty much did everything for me. It kind of made it really easy. But I think that's one of the satisfying things about it, is because you go into these dungeons and some of them have various different challenges, and you have to put together a build to kind of get through it. And when you actually get a good build, it's so satisfying. And so like one of my favorite builds was with the magician, who like his main attack's like a bunch of cards, but then he pulls the rabbits and tigers out of his hats. I made sure I have that ability. Made sure I have the summon zombie ability. And then I think the snail's ability to kind of shoot. He shoots like this goo that slows enemies down, and just using that, and then buffers to like make sure my allies were healed up as I was attacked, make sure I get more mana. And so I just summon a bunch of people and just let them do the work for me. It's super satisfying. It's really, really fun. So check this game out if you are so inclined. Again, it's a Drinkbox game. So they did Guacamelee 1 and 2, which I've heard are very good. I haven't played them personally myself, but I think I have at least one of those on Xbox, if not both. But great art style, great soundtrack, really fun gameplay. You're always leveling up, so you have that constant, feeling of progression through the game, and it's just a good time, a really good time. It's on Game Pass if you're on Xbox, so you can try that out, or it's on all the other platforms where you can pick it up for a reasonable price. I think it's like $20 or $25, which is well worth it in my opinion. So yeah, Nobody Saved the World, man. That's a fantastic game that I highly recommend. And then, as I do anytime I beat a game, it's like, okay, well, what do I want to play next? And I've kind of been feeling like it's time to jump into Cyberpunk 2077. I'm kind of buying into this hype with the new show. God, there's so much background noise for my other computer. There's so much background noise. But anyways, Cyberpunk 2077, it's been calling my name. And this game has some stink on it. As we all know, with its disastrous launch, broken promises, it candidly didn't really matter, but it's I think it's time. So I booted it up. I started the game on PlayStation 5, put my I have the PS4 copy. I actually have two of them because Best Buy screwed up. So I have two. One's still sealed, so I'll keep that. But made sure to get the free upgrade of the PS5 version. And I've played it for about just under 4 hours, so I'm just scratching the surface of this game. But I gotta say, so far, it's a beautiful game. It's running pretty smooth. Haven't really noticed one bug this morning, now that I think about it, where your buddy character, I think his name's Jackie. So I parked my car right by him to meet up with him. And he just walked right through my car as we were going to someplace. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a thing. And there was actually another bug that I think about where I was on someone's computer and I couldn't move the computer's mouse, which was kind of annoying. So I had to kind of finagle that. But a couple bugs still exist. But overall, I think it's running pretty smooth. Like I said, it looks really great. I like the use of the adaptive triggers in the PS5, when you're shooting and stuff, but driving is really weird because the trigger really, really stiff as you're driving. I feel like I have to really hold that thing down. And you can it moves a little bit as you shift gears. It's kind of weird. I need to check the settings if I can turn that off while I'm driving because I'm not really feeling that. But it's really cool. The world is crazy cool. It's almost like it's its own character in and of itself, which I think, you think BioShock, right? Where Rapture is in and of itself a character in that story. And I kind of feel like that's how it is with Cyberpunk, where this Night City is kind of its own character and has a big role in everything. So it's fascinating stuff. And this game is definitely not for kids. It's very graphic. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. But the intro I liked. I played through the intro. I thought that was really cool. I'm playing a corpo background. I decided to go with that. And I chose a lady who's pretty smoking hot. I made her pretty hot. So, that's cool. And it's great. I'm curious to see how the story is. I haven't met Keanu Reeves. Haven't encountered that yet. But I have to say, though, one thing I do have to say is that there are a lot of systems and tutorials in this game. There's just so much going on, and it's a little much and a little intimidating. So there's just a lot to learn, a lot to get up to speed with, and I kind of feel like I think it'll take me a while just to kind of grasp everything. And so they do throw a lot at you. So I do want to call that out, but I'm excited to play more of it. I almost didn't want to sit down and record the podcast because I just want to go play some more and experience it. So yeah, playing Cyberpunk 2077. We'll see how far I get. I'd like to beat it, but I know it's a pretty long game, so I'm going to give it a fair share. But I have to say though, it's kind of such a bummer because, and then in the back of my mind, I just know that there's this kind of stink on this game, this aura about it that has already kind of hindered my opinion of it because of its terrible launch and the way, CG Product kind of handled everything. So we'll see if I can overcome it and they can kind of win me back with this game. So now let's dive into some of those news items that I mentioned up at the top. And the first is that Xbox updated their website and they put up a brand new page regarding the Activision Blizzard acquisition. And this one was pretty interesting. I'm going to pull it up here. So this was noticed by many, reported by multiple outlets, that basically Microsoft launched this new site, and the intent is to show the benefits of the Activision Blizzard acquisition. And in my opinion, and you'll see why, is to really downplay the impact of this acquisition. Now, the main item from the website that's kind of making the rounds is this kind of summarized visual with 3 columns and 3 bullet points each that kind of talks about those benefits. So I want to read them to you, go through them one by one, and share my thoughts on them. So the first column is benefits for players, right? So it says more games on more devices, including Xbox, PlayStation, phones, and online. And to that, I have to say, how so? Like, does this mean that they plan on keeping Activision Blizzard games on PlayStation for the foreseeable future? Or is it just meaning, are they kind of playing cheeky here where it's like, yeah, it's going to be available through the rest of their agreement, however, 4 or 5 years or whatever that is. I don't know. And then I also, what immediately comes to mind too is like, okay, well, what about Starfield? Like, obviously they didn't have an issue. I understand that's a separate acquisition, but my point is that everything new, is going to be Xbox exclusive. So I don't really buy this point, outside of the fact that, okay, maybe you'll go through your existing agreements, like with Diablo 4, Call of Duty, etc. So they're already being a little cheeky. And then the next one says choice in how and where people buy games with subscriptions and one-off purchase options. It's like, okay, like, sure, that's technically true, but we all know that the intent behind this is to put everything on Game Pass to, undercut the competition and makes them, really draw players to that service. Even though you can buy things ad hoc or a la carte, I should say, the whole point is around Game Pass. So it's like, okay, again, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth here a little bit. And then it says for 95% of gamers who play games on phones, alternatives to gaming offerings from the dominant mobile platforms. And my first thought was like, okay, do they plan to make more mobile games? Like, is that kind of what it is? Or what do they mean? And this is probably what they actually mean is the push for xCloud via mobile. So you access your Game Pass library via xCloud on mobile, and that's an alternative to, the Apple Store or Google Play Store or any of those ones. So sure, I guess. Okay, maybe I'll give you one there. The next column is benefits for game creators. So the first one says more ways to get games in front of more players through support, investment, and better access to games. So with this one, I'm kind of curious on this because if you make your things exclusive, you are taking games away from a player base. And I know Xbox's whole mantra is, they want people to have easier access to video games, and Phil Spencer's little spiel on that. But at the same time, like Game Pass in and of itself is a curated service, I should say. And to allow game creators, it says there's more ways to get their games in front of more players. Well, with Game Pass as a curated service, not every game makes it to Game Pass. There are tons of games that are available to purchase that don't make it to Game Pass. And what I see, and this is anecdotal, but what I've kind of seemed to see around the general sentiment on the Xbox ecosystem is that if something's not really on Game Pass, unless it's like a big, AAA game like Elden Ring or something of that scale, then folks don't really look to pick that up. It's this kind of mentality change that I've talked about that I really feel like we're seeing and happen and shift in real time where, if it's not on Game Pass, or it's over whatever that lowered perceived market value is for that game, people aren't interested in it. They're going to wait. How many times do you see people online that say, "Oh, wait for it to be on Xbox or Game Pass"? I see that all the time. So and if not every game is going to be on Game Pass, for developers, I'm talking about developers, then you're not really giving them more ways. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but that's just kind of how my mind kind of takes it. I don't really buy that, especially when you're potentially taking games away from an established audience. The next one says better revenue and fair marketplace rules through our App Store principles. It's okay. Sure. Okay. Every console holder has, their storefront, and they've got their own principles and rules and stuff like that. So, okay, that's great. Then greater flexibility in payment systems and experience, and the experience they provide their fans. Again, okay. So you're using their platform to sell stuff. Okay, that's fine. I'll buy that. The last column says benefits for the gaming industry. So it says more competition in mobile where a couple of big players dominate. And again, I got to ask how. We've already kind of touched on this mobile thing. I feel like this is a redundant point here. But again, does this just mean instead of Apple Arcade or, Fortnite, folks can access Game Pass? You're just giving them an additional offering? Okay. I guess. Sure. After that, greater competition in traditional gaming, where Sony and Nintendo will remain the biggest. And this is the big one. This is a big one. And I think a lot of people have kind of honed in on this one and kind of looked at it as okay, they're admitting they're in third place. And it's well, yeah, I mean, technically they are. And again, I think this is told to downplay this whole acquisition, this one specifically. Sony and Nintendo will remain the biggest. That's not actually true from a game revenue standpoint. So I pulled up an article from Eurogamer that showed 2020 and 2021 gaming revenues, the top 10 gaming companies by gaming revenues. Sony sits at number 2 behind Tencent, and Tencent is far and ahead. And remember, Tencent is that big Chinese conglomerate that works with the CCP, so not really a good company. But Sony's at number 2, though. Microsoft sits at number 4, and then Activision Blizzard are at number 7, where Nintendo is actually number 8. And so if you were to actually just combine the revenues of Microsoft and Activision, that'd be about $21 billion, which would put them above Sony by about $1 billion, give or take. Now, I know the merging of these companies is not that simple in terms of their revenues, that it's not going to shake out and be that simplistic. But I bring that up because that's not, that statement right there is not actually factual. Now, maybe from a certain perspective it is, in the sense that, from an exclusive standpoint, Xbox is light years behind on that, because Sony and Nintendo kind of dominate in that first party regard in terms of quality and just games, having good games. Exclusive good games, I should say, high quality AAA exclusives. So that I take umbrage with that one, because I really feel like that's misleading, and that's really transparent how much you're downplaying this Activision Blizzard deal. And the last one says emphasis on positive workplace culture and increased local investment from Microsoft and studios and creative ecosystems around the world. And I think that is absolutely true. And this is clearly in response to all of the Activision allegations to say, hey, we're better than that. We're cleaning up this mess. Look at how awesome we are, that type of thing. But, again, and what I think a lot of people kind of just brush off in regards to this entire deal is that even though all these horrible allegations are in play, that with Microsoft coming in and now acquiring Activision Blizzard, they're kind of giving all of the CEO and all the executives basically a fat payday and an easy out for all the alleged crap that went on. Because I think we know, Bobby Kotick, after the Activision deal goes through, he's out. And he's taking a fatty payday. and just he's gone. And it's like everyone got so mad with all these allegations, and then you praise Microsoft and Xbox coming in and saying, look, they saved Activision Blizzard from these horrible acts from all their leadership. It's like, well, yeah, but they also gave them a fat payday and told them to go and gave them an easy out. Like, that's kind of slimy, in my opinion. And I don't really think people kind of brought that perspective up. So, something to keep in mind. Now, overall, this kind of reeks of desperation, at least kind of that's how I interpret it. And it may be indicative that like something could be going on maybe behind the scenes where they kind of feel like they need to put this fluff piece out there to fluff up the regulators and make sure this thing passes. I think it just broke yesterday or the day before that Brazil approved the acquisition. So on to the next country, that type of thing. And to be clear, I do think this deal will go through. I'm pretty confident in that. Let's be honest, governments anywhere aren't good at doing anything. And I have no faith that there will be any reason enough for them to stop this outside of what we've talked about and things like that. So yeah, that is what it is. But I thought it was really interesting that this popped up. And again, it's them trying to downplay this, which is I don't think a lot of this stuff is true. There is some truth to it, but it's not like clear cut and dry, if you know what I mean. So now I want to move on to the next story, which is all about CG Projekt Red and their announcements on a bunch of new projects. So in a series of tweets, CG Projekt Red confirmed a bunch of new games that they are working on. And so they showcase this roadmap. And so the roadmap includes a new expansion for Cyberpunk 2077 called Phantom Liberty, and that comes out next year. A Witcher spin-off game called Projekt Sirius, which they stated is set in the Witcher universe. It'll differ from past productions and offer multiplayer gameplay on top of a single-player experience. Kind of interesting there. A brand new Witcher trilogy, starting with I think Project Polaris, which is a story-driven open-world RPG built on the legacy of The Witcher 3. So I imagine that one will be pretty similar to what we kind of have come to know from the Witcher games. And then all 3 games are set to release within a 6-year period, which seems pretty ambitious. So once that first one comes out, all 3 of them will be out in the next, that 6-year period. They also announced a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077 called Project Orion, and then a new IP called Project Hadar. I don't know how to say that. So pretty crazy. It's also important to note, do have this last note here, that the Witcher trilogy and spin-off will be in partnership with third-party studios for development. So CD Projekt isn't making literally all these games. They are partnering with some third-party studios to help make them. But this is big. This is huge news, especially for fans of Cyberpunk and The Witcher. I think we're definitely going to get our fill of that in the next decade. But this is also a lot. This is so new expansion, which I never played the Witcher 3 expansions, but if there's anything like that, it'll be pretty big. 4 new Witcher games with the trilogy and then the spinoff with the multiplayer. Sequel to Cyberpunk 2077. And a new IP. So what is that? 6 games? Yeah. 3 with the trilogy, spinoff, Cyberpunk 2077, and a new IP. 6 games. That's a lot of games, dude. That's a ton. And my gut reaction is okay, this is all cool, good info, but slow it down, man. We're not going to see any of this. So we'll see the Phantom Liberty expansion next year, but I don't anticipate we'll see any of this other stuff for 2 to 3 years. So why are we talking about it? I don't understand. Now, I think it's probably due to, appease their shareholders, help with their stock valuation, because I know with the whole Cyberpunk thing, the company's value just tanked. Even though they made a ridiculous amount of money, instantly. I think they sold 12 or 13 million copies right away. So huge. They've made their money back and then some. So I think that's what it's for, and it's probably just to kind of, set the stage to say, here's what we're working on, and then appease the business side of things. But like we talked about when I was talking about Cyberpunk 2077, like I can't help but feel that this brand and this company is tarnished for how they handled Cyberpunk 2077. Like I mentioned, I'm skeptical playing the game now, and I definitely feel like I'm not going to be able to appreciate it as much as if it didn't launch in the terrible state that it did. So it's kind of an interesting situation, and like most gamers, I would imagine that most gamers feel this way, that CD Projekt really has to kind of earn our trust back, And I think some people are starting to feel that, with this revitalization of Cyberpunk 2077. I think the game just surpassed 20 million copies sold, which is massive, especially in less than 2 years, especially given the launch that it had. And also they've got that Netflix show Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which actually I meant to mention that earlier. I started watching that. That's one of the reasons why I haven't played a ton of games, is because I started watching that show, and it's awesome. I think I'm halfway through it, because I think it's 10 episodes. I got through the 5th yesterday. It's really good. Like the anime style, I think perfectly fits in with that universe. Like it's like, I don't know, it's not as good as Castlevania in my opinion, but it's like up there in terms of how good this is. Great soundtrack, good music. It kind of gives me almost Cowboy Bebop vibes in kind of the presentation of it. It's certainly not for kids. There's definitely like Cyberpunk, the game itself, there's quite a bit of nudity and stuff like that, and some pretty vulgar and violent scenes, but it's pretty awesome. I really, really dig it. And so with the resurgence of that, I think they're sitting really, really pretty. So, and the kind of the shitty part about that is that, like, you'd hope that CD Projekt Red has kind of learned from their mistakes with the disastrous launch of Cyberpunk. But again, with the amount of money they made off of that game from day one, I don't think, money talks, right? Even if you have a shitty product, but a bunch of people buy it and you make a ton of money on it, it doesn't matter. So part of me thinks that they're not going to learn their lesson, despite some of the things that we hear. So we'll see. But it's kind of a cautious company to deal with going forward. But like I said, some cool stuff coming our way. And so, if I like Cyberpunk 2077 all the way through, this expansion could be quite enticing. So now let's jump into the next one, which is this game called Wild Hearts. So a new trailer went up for this game. It's a gameplay trailer, and this game is done by Koei Tecmo and EA, which is a really interesting partnership, by the way. Like, I don't know if Koei Tecmo's ever partnered with EA, but that's I find that fascinating, because Koei Tecmo's very Japanese, and then you have EA, which is, I don't know, seems like a weird pairing. But they've got this new game called Wild Hearts, and I don't really feel like I've heard much about this game. Like, the name kind of sounds familiar, but I don't remember seeing anything about it. So I decided to check this trailer out. And it's about 7 minutes long, and it's just pure gameplay, which is beautiful. Give me just the gameplay trailers. I don't need to see this cinematic bullshit. Show me the gameplay. And it's basically Monster Hunter. Like, genuinely, it's Monster Hunter. But with Koei Tecmo's kind of Japanese spin on it. But it's cool. I kind of dig what I'm seeing here. So they showed off basically where they took down one of the big monsters. It's like this big wild hog with huge tusks, and it's massive and all that stuff. But they show players kind of dropping in as the fight goes on, which is kind of cool. And just watching this gameplay, like, you can clearly see Monster Hunter inspirations here, just from the attacks, the kind of the aesthetic, like, everything about it just screams Monster Hunter, which again isn't a bad thing by any means. But they've also added some new elements. So there did seem to be like some different types of weapons. Like, one player had this like Japanese umbrella they were like attacking with it almost like a sword, but the umbrella was like open. So that was kind of cool. There was a ton of like building in the game, not like Fortnite building, but basically like they would place a structure, and various structures and things would do a variety of different things. Like one of them let them launch up on this little like propeller flyer, so it would kind of like hang glide back down. There were zip lines to help navigate the terrain, and there was one that was like this big smashing hammer that attacked the monster. Some threw bombs. There's different bombs you can use as well, and so it's that. I thought that was kind of neat, kind of cool, and I'm curious what are some of all the different building things you can make in this game. And the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is the monsters seem to have different phases. So at one point they actually break the tusk off of the pig, or the hog, I should say. And then all of a sudden its tusks turn like this fire or lava like, and it gets really angry. So it turns in like this second phase, almost like kind of like Dark Souls or something, right? And then they have to keep attacking it and try to take it down. So I thought that was kind of cool. And overall, I got to say, it looks pretty cool. It's something I'm definitely going to keep my eye on. And I don't know. I check it out. I definitely recommend you check it out, because I think it looks cool. It's, again, clearly a Monster Hunter inspired game, but I think it's cool to see that EA has invested in such a unique game to kind of bring something and add something to their portfolio, and do it in a way to try to capture some of that Monster Hunter market that, Capcom just kind of dominates. So I thought it was kind of cool. Like I said, check it out. It's only 7 minutes long, but I liked what I saw. Okay. Now let's talk about Super Mario Bros. We have to. You know that. I'm a big Super Mario fan. So Nintendo put on a very brief Nintendo Direct. And at the time of this recording, I'm recording on Friday afternoon. It was yesterday, on October 6th. And it involved, Miyamoto talking about the movie, and then one of the head guys from Illumination Studios, I think, or Illumination Animation, whatever that is. They do the Minion movies. One of those guys talking, and then they really briefly brought up Chris Pratt, who voices Mario, and Jack Black, who voices Bowser, to talk about it, and then we got to see the trailer. So one of the things I thought was kind of cool to learn is that Illumination and Nintendo have been talking about this, and it's kind of been in the works for the last 7 years, which is pretty crazy. And it's exciting to see that it's finally come to fruition. But after watching the trailer, and I will say this about the trailer before I get into my thoughts. So the trailer kind of opens up with Bowser's kind of floating castle. He crashes down onto this, ice kingdom, and the ice kingdom is occupied by a bunch of like penguins and the Penguin King. And Bowser comes out. The CGI looks amazing, by the way. Beautiful CGI. Bowser comes out. They're attacking him, and it's kind of got that Illumination like comedy to it, which I really dig. But they're throwing like snowballs at him, and like Bowser's like, "This is ridiculous," and then just blows huge fire like a dragon onto their castle and like takes them out. It's fantastic. Then you see Mario, who meets Toad for the first time, because it looks like he kind of got warped to the Mushroom Kingdom. And really, that's it. A couple of random other shots of like Luigi and stuff like that. You don't hear Luigi, but you see him and stuff like that. So I have to say, though, this looks great. I liked what I saw. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I genuinely think this looks awesome. And I was really surprised by Jack Black's Bowser voice, because you hear him talk, and I expected, like School of Rock style Jack Black. And it's not what he got. It's a very raspy, dragony voice. Like it's really well done. I'm surprised, like genuinely surprised. I think it's on point. It's great. Like when I heard it for the first time, I was like, that's Jack Black? Like, really? That sounds great. Now for Mario, a lot of people are talking about his face, and it looks a little off-putting. And I have to agree to a certain extent. I feel like, though, like when you're just staring at it, when he's not moving and looking at it, you're like, okay, yeah, that's a little off-putting. But when it's like kind of, in animation, it's moving, he's kind of, doing his stuff, it's not as jarring in that perspective. So, there's that. But I have to say, because Mario talks, you finally hear Chris Pratt as Mario. It's very much just Chris Pratt. And that's the one thing that's kind of hard for me to get over. I'll be able to get over it. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but you can, like, it just kind of feels like Chris Pratt rather than like Mario. You can almost kind of hear where he's kind of doing the "it's a me" that type of stuff in the way he's talking. He doesn't outright say it, but you can kind of almost get that like twang in it. So I'll be curious like how much Mario talks, but I think I'll be able to manage it and kind of get over it. So we'll see. But I think this looks great. I cannot wait. April 7th of next year for this movie to come out. I will be there day one. Absolutely. I will be there. And maybe it's a lot of nostalgia talking because, I've like grew up playing Nintendo, grew up playing Mario games. Like that's just my childhood. That's one of the reasons why I collect amiibos, because it just speaks to my childhood. I love it. I love Nintendo for that. So maybe there's that. But then, the other part of it that I'm really excited about is I want to take my son to this movie. So my son is finally old enough to, be able to, go to the movie theater and like sit through it. I haven't taken him to a movie myself, but my wife has on the summer when they do like summer kids movies. And, he's able to do that. And so just the thought of taking my son to the movie theater, like getting some popcorn, getting some candy, some soda, and to go sit down and enjoy this movie with my son is everything. Like to share that experience, like something that is so nostalgic for me, so core to my childhood, and share that with him, and to watch what seems to be an awesome, really funny movie is everything. I cannot wait for that. So I'm on board. I loved it. I can't wait to see more of it, and I cannot wait to go see it. So let me know what you guys think about this one, though, because it kind of seems, I think some people are out on the fence on it. So let me know what you think about the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So now let's get into the main topic of this week's episode about Horizon. So it's been reported by multiple outlets that Sony is planning to remaster Horizon Zero Dawn for the PS5, as well as they're working on a Horizon multiplayer project. So this kind of made the rounds, started, I think, last Sunday. So, over a week ago by the time you hear this podcast, kind of just out of the blue came about. And then people were took the internet by storm, that's for sure. But I want to read some of the article from Push Square to kind of give some context and kind of summarize what's going on here and what's being reported. So here's what Push Square said. They said, and I quote, "Here is a head scratcher for your Sunday evening. Sony is reportedly remastering Horizon Zero Dawn for PS5. The claim is made by website MP First, citing multiple sources, and more online personalities in the know have come out publicly to say the project is real. Some even say they've seen it themselves. This does indeed seem to be real, and VGC sources corroborate the rumor." VGC being Video Games Chronicle. The article continues to go on, quote, "The remaster is supposedly designed to bring the original PS4 game closer to its sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. Along with the usual graphical improvements, apparently they're so good that it's unclear whether this will be patched as a remaster or pitched as a remaster or remake. The accessibility options built for Aloy's second adventure will be brought to the first game. There will also be some quality of life improvements, updated character models, a better lighting system, enhanced textures, and upgraded animations. The site says a Horizon Zero Dawn remaster remake isn't the only thing Guerrilla Games has in the works, however. We also have a Horizon online multiplayer game for PS5 and PC to look forward to, which could feature co-op. Sources said that Sony had been keen to include co-op in the game's sequel, Forbidden West, but Guerrilla decided to save the feature for a future project, which they believed would either be a standalone online spin-off or Horizon 3, said VGC, end quote. So, there's a lot going on here. A lot going on. And so, as I mentioned, the internet has blown up, and you see all kinds of hot takes out there. And one of the main sentiments I seem to see is that we don't need this. Like, no one wants this Horizon Horizon Zero Dawn remaster. And I have to agree. I actually agree with that sentiment. I don't think we need a remake or remaster of this game. It came out in 2017, so it's not, it's barely, 5 years old. And I think it was last summer we got a 60 FPS patch for Horizon Zero Dawn on the PlayStation 5. And I actually hopped into that game because I wanted to prepare myself a little bit for Horizon Forbidden West, because previously I hadn't played that game since it originally came out after I beat Zelda. So then I hopped into Horizon. And I kind of wanted a refresher on the story, and they just put out the 60 FPS patch, and I thought, what better time? Let me jump into this on the PS5. So I did. I played it for about 20 hours. I didn't beat it again, but I played the game for, a good amount of time, and it ran great. The 60 FPS patch was awesome. Ran super smooth, beautiful looking game. Such a great, Horizon really is a genuinely great game. And so I think that's totally sufficient. I think that's totally fine. We don't necessarily need, more of Horizon Forbidden West features in the first game. Now, one of the other sentiments I seem to see that kind of going about on the internet is that this is Sony's new strategy, just to bring all their PS4 games, remake all of them, and bring them to the PS5 natively, and that's just what they're doing and what they do. And I kind of take a little umbrage with that, though there is truth in that to a certain degree. I take umbrage in that in the sense that, we don't know all of Sony's plans. We know a couple of games in the first party lineup, and that's it. And we really don't know that much. We know Spider-Man 2 is coming, presumably next year. We have Wolverine, also from Insomniac, coming out probably in the next 3 years, I would imagine. And then we know about Factions, that's coming. And then outside of that, from the first party team, we don't really know what's going on. We can speculate, such as Ghost of Tsushima 2, right? That's a pretty safe bet, but who knows when we'll see that. We have no confirmation, though. But we also know there's a bunch of live service games that are coming and stuff like that. So that's one reason why I don't buy it. But on the other hand, I do think there's some truth to it in that I can see that because they've they have done this. Obviously, the remake for The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, the director's cuts editions of that. And so I don't disagree entirely. But I also push back a little bit in the sense that they did this with Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima came out in 2020, and I think they did the director's cut late in 2021, and I didn't see a bunch of pushback for that game. Although it, had the expansion and stuff like that, but I didn't see the outcry. Same with Death Stranding. Albeit that's not first party, but I think the point's the same. That's Sony's IP. That's kind of their strategy, to do these director cut style products for the PS5. And quite candidly, that's what I think we're going to end up getting here for Horizon. If this does kind of turn out to be real, I think that's what we're going to get, is to where it's going to be a director's cut type product, where they remaster Horizon Zero Dawn, repackage it for the PS5 with, those tweaks and updates that we had talked about. Obviously, the Frozen Wilds DLC, etc. And that's what we'll get. And I think that lines up with kind of Sony's strategy, with what they've done historically. And I don't really see a problem with that, albeit outside of that, I feel like it's a waste of resources because, with anytime they do something like that, that means they're not working on something new, presumably, right? So that's a bummer, in my opinion. The other, let's say that comes to fruition, though, I have to ask and push back on Sony a little bit, who's this for? Because I think Horizon Zero Dawn is a beautiful looking game. I think with the 60 FPS patch on PS5, it runs well. I don't really think we need that. So, and I know they've given Horizon Zero Dawn on PlayStation Plus. I think at one point it was part of the PS Plus collection. Maybe I could be wrong there, but I know it's been on PS Plus in terms of giving that game away for free, and it's been super cheap for You can pick it up for $10. I think I got the Game of the Year edition for like $10 just as a second copy because I love it so much. And I didn't have the DLC. So, like, who's it for? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who the market is for that. But I could be wrong. Maybe there was a huge market and it would sell, millions of copies, like The Last of Us. So, I don't know. I don't seem to know all that stuff, but that's kind of where my mind goes in regards to that. But I don't think people need to like chill out a little bit. Like let's wait for some confirmation. Look at this through, a level-headed lens, and we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? But the other part that I find super fascinating is the multiplayer component. So this multiplayer game that is being rumored to where it's going to be co-op. And I can't remember where I've heard it or read it, but I remember at some point, I think someone talking about like a Monster Hunter style game in the Horizon universe. And I love this idea. I love it a lot. And I hope that's what we would be getting. Because Horizon's combat in taking down the dinosaurs, I think fits perfectly with a Monster Hunter style game. So like this is like how I envision this game, okay? So you have like your village, right? That's your hub world. And this is where you can, craft weapons, craft armor, upgrades, all that stuff, kind of manage your character, meet up with your friends and your teammates and stuff like that. And then you go out on these hunts to go track down and take down these big robot dinosaurs. And you have Horizon's very fast-paced, fluid combat with all the particle effects and all these, the pieces flying off the dinosaurs, and you got, a group of like 4, hunters and stuff attacking this thing. It sounds awesome. It sounds really, really incredible, and that kind of being the main loop. But then what I also think would be really, really cool that I would love to see in this style of game is to also thread maybe some sort of story elements into the game, as well as kind of these monster hunting sections kind of almost be small little open worlds themselves, to where you can kind of go out and explore like you would in Horizon, Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West. Explore the biome, if you will, and maybe find cool little things in there, maybe do some side quests in there, and maybe find some of those narrative threads that are throughout the game that you could do either solo or cooperatively with your friends. And that being a live service game to a certain degree, I think makes perfect sense. I love this idea. Like, that's my ideal Horizon game. I think it fits perfectly within the Monster Hunter, gameplay loop and formula. I would love to see that. And I would also love to see, kind of an expansion upon this universe, and kind of getting away from Aloy and the Zero Dawn project and all that stuff, and just kind of how people live in this now new version of Earth and all that. So that would be awesome. That's what I think, at least I hope, we would get from this game. But of course, let me know what you think. Do you even like that idea for a multiplayer game set in the Horizon universe? Would you play it? I'm not a big multiplayer guy, but if something around like that came, I would jump into it for sure. Even if it costs, $50, $70, I would probably jump into that, because I really like that idea. Especially if you can do it, solo or cooperatively. I love having the option for that. Because again, I'm not going to go seek out cooperative experiences, but if I can enjoy like a live service game by myself, I'll try it out. Yeah, that sounds good. And that's all I got for this week's episode. Pretty jam-packed in terms of news and stories and things like that. Yeah, lots of stuff going on within games. But let me know what you guys think about any of these stories. Of course, you can write into the show, drop us a comment, leave a comment on the YouTube version if you'd like. You can hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. I'd love to hear from you guys. Also, of course, let me know if you have any thoughts, concerns, comments, ideas. Write in. Let me know. We'll get you incorporated into the show. Hope you guys stay safe out there. Play lots of games. Be well. Maybe touch some grass. Enjoy football, because it's happening right now, and I love it. College football is so good. yeah, I think I'm going to probably go eat, maybe get a little bit of Cyberpunk in and get my Friday evening started. So thank you again for all the love, kindness, and support. Hope you guys do well out there. I'll talk to you next week. Until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.